Amazing story, as you know, that has rocked Hollywood. Joining me now to talk more about the fallout from the scandal is attorney Whitney Boan. Whitney, it's always good to talk to you about this.
Great to see you, Danielle.
I guess the first question is, are there going to be any repercussions for Harvey Weinstein?
Well, there already have been. I mean, he's been terminated from his position with the Weinstein Group. And obviously, you know, I would expect that there could be legal repercussions as well in terms of there's been police investigations that have been ongoing. We know that. There's even been, you know, undercover surveillance in terms of trying to catch him in the act of talking about assaulting women. It just really boils down to statute of limitations issues, meaning whether or not legally there's still time to pursue a prosecution, if a prosecutor decides there's sufficient evidence, of course, but if there's time to pursue a prosecution with the passage of time with some of these events.
You know, you and I were talking just very briefly off camera about, you know, how do you broach the subject to your employer, right? How do you not feel like, okay, am I now going to be judged if I'm facing harassment at work? What should women do?
Well, we were talking about this before we went on. You know, I think for a lot of women who are starting out younger in their careers, this is a big issue.
And it's hard.
It's really hard because, you know, there's a slippery slope in terms of, you know, you may feel horrible. It's a horrible experience. It's demeaning. It affects you emotionally. It may even affect you physically as a result. But you don't want to say something necessarily and then be penalized that with your employer. My advice is go ahead and talk to a lawyer. It's a good idea to kind of find out whether or not, you know, you have some cause of action that may be available to you. That's a confidential conversation when you talk with a lawyer. And meaning you have attorney-client privilege.
Sure.
Most lawyers are then going to advise you should probably talk to your supervisor about it. And if you feel comfortable talking to your supervisor immediately, doing that too, in addition to going ahead and talking to a lawyer. But if you're not, talk to the lawyer.
Talk to the lawyer.
Yeah.
You know, one of the things I find interesting in cases like this is that, you know, you have one person come forward and then all of a sudden you have so many other women who are now coming out and say, me too, me too.
The floodgates.
It becomes a floodgate. But why is that? Why do you think it takes one person to come out for more women to come out and say, yeah, you know what, this happened to me also?
Well, you know, it has to be so disenfranchising to know that everybody knows that this powerful man has been doing this and acting like that for years.
30 years.
Exactly. And so when it happens to one of these individual women, I can only imagine that in their minds, in addition to the other concerns they may have about their careers or the stigma that may be attached to them for saying something or taking on somebody so powerful, it makes it that much harder when you know everybody knows that. You know, some of these accusers were even told in emails by individuals from Harvey Weinstein's group, you know, yeah, that's just what he's like.
That's just Harvey.
That's just how he is. Yeah. And how horrible must that feel in terms of making you feel that much more like you can't do anything about it, and if you say something that no one's really going to do anything about it anyways. So it really seems to just take someone who's really strong coming out and doing this, and then everybody else feels more comfortable being like, you know, there's safety in numbers.
And especially if it's somebody who's more established in their career, who may not have as much to lose as somebody who's 22 and just starting out and maybe facing
and to some extent, I think as a society, you know, people look at these older allegations and they look at it in terms of, well, they don't have the opportunity to pursue a prosecution, maybe they don't have an opportunity to file a civil suit. Yes. And so in some way, I think people might look at it and think there's a little more even credibility to it in terms of they're not motivated by trying to get some financial, you know, payoff out of this, even though there were financial related to this. You know, it's horrible.
Ongoing discussion for sure. Whitney Boan, always good to see you.
Good to see you, Danielle.
You take care. All right, let's go back to Jamie.